That gut punch feeling when someone you're really interested in seems to be actively ignoring you. We've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
That silence that just, it screams volumes and leaves you wondering, what's going on. Well, that's precisely what we're diving into today. We've got a fascinating collection of perspectives on this. Everything from unconventional dating advice and the psychology of attraction to, well, a neuroscientist's take on the deep pain of relationship loss.
Wow, quite a range.
Yeah. And our mission, as always, is to extract the most valuable and actionable insights for you.
And it's not a comfortable feeling, is it? That unanswered text, that deliberate avoidance. It stirs up all sorts of emotions, insecurity, confusion, maybe even a flash of anger as you try to figure out the why behind it all.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore some of the common reasons why you might find yourself on the receiving end of silence based on our sources. We'll also challenge a few of those immediate assumptions we often jump to. But the really powerful part of this discussion lies in the Stoic-inspired strategies we've uncovered, practical ways for you to regain your sense of equilibrium and ultimately protect your well-being.
That sounds useful.
And we'll also touch on the neuroscience behind the pain of breakups, because those feelings of being ignored or unwanted have a very real basis in our brain's wiring.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Why does this happen? Why do we experience that frustrating silence from someone we like? And is it always a straightforward sign that they're just not interested?
Well, according to the Stoic tribe videos we looked at, our first instinct that it must be something we did wrong is often misplaced.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they make a compelling case that when you're being ignored by a woman you're interested in, it frequently stems from her own internal world.
Her stuff, not yours.
Exactly. This could be driven by like a subconscious need for validation, a dynamic playing out in the subtle power struggles of dating, or, let's be real, she might simply be preoccupied or just not feel the same way.
That resonates. People are complex, and navigating the early stages of romantic interest can be, well, nuanced. There are often unspoken factors at play.
Definitely.
But then we also have the insights from the What to Do When a Girl Ignores You article, which offers a slightly different shade to the situation. While it largely agrees that silence indicates a lack of interest and a desire for you to stop pursuing, it does acknowledge those less common scenarios where it could be a tactic to garner attention.
Right. That article points out subtle cues like fleeting eye contact or flirting with others while glancing in your direction, or even seemingly deliberate attempts to provoke jealousy as potential indicators that the ignoring might be a bit of a calculated move.
It's a fine line, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that same article strongly cautions that in the vast majority of instances, that silence is a pretty clear signal. She's trying to create distance without a direct confrontation.
Avoidance.
Exactly. So while those occasional signs of potential manipulation might exist, the most likely interpretation is that the silence is intentional in the way you probably think it is. She's just not that interested.
Right. And this is where the core message from Stoic Tribe really hits home. Regardless of her underlying reasons, whether she's busy, not interested, or playing games, the crucial takeaway is that your reaction is the pivotal point.
Okay.
And it's the one thing you have absolute authority over. So she's not responding. What does the Stoic philosophy suggest as the initial approach?
The first and perhaps the most surprising step, according to Stoic Tribe, is to do nothing.
Nothing. Like just nothing.
Well, yeah. But it's crucial to understand that this isn't about being childish or engaging in tit-for-tat behavior. It's deeply rooted in the Stoic principle of channeling your energy towards what you can influence your responses.
Right, your own actions.
And accepting what's beyond your control, her actions.
So this do-nothing strategy isn't fueled by spite. It's about demonstrating, through your lack of reaction, that her silence simply doesn't have the power to upset your emotional equilibrium, disrupt your plans, or undermine your inherent self-assurance.
Yeah, it's about taking your power back internally.
Exactly.
Precisely. Think about the typical impulse.
Yeah.
You're ignored, and you might feel the urge to send multiple texts. Right?
Yeah, the double text.
Or maybe even like a frustrated message demanding an explanation. Stoic Tribe argues that this is the antithesis of Stoic composure. It broadcasts that her silence did get a reaction out of you, basically handing her the control in the situation.
Whereas the Stoic approach, that initial pause, the do nothing, shows her that you're not playing that reactive game. And here's a fascinating aspect. Stoic Tribe suggests that your lack of an expected reaction can actually pique her curiosity.
Oh, how so?
Well, she might start to wonder why she isn't eliciting the response she anticipated. Maybe she expected you to chase or get upset.
Huh. It flips the dynamic, doesn't it?
Kind of, yeah.
Instead of you pursuing, she might begin to question the interaction. But even if that doesn't happen, the do-nothing strategy has already benefited you by safeguarding your emotional state and preserving your self-respect.
That's a really good point. You win either way, internally.
So what's the next layer in this Stoic approach after the do-nothing?
The next concrete action, according to Stoic Tribe, is to consciously redirect all that mental energy you were investing in obsessing over her silence back into yourself.
The self-focus.
Yep, back into the things that are important in your own life.
It's about shifting that focus from seeking external validation to nurturing internal growth and fulfillment. Stoic Tribe offers some excellent practical examples here, like getting to the gym, dedicating yourself to those personal or professional ambitions you've maybe been putting on hold.
Hobbies.
Immersing yourself in your hobbies, exactly, and connecting with the friends and family who genuinely value your presence.
And the reasoning behind this is twofold, really. Firstly, by actively investing in your own well-being and pursuits, her ignoring you becomes less significant in the broader context of your life. You're proactively building your own happiness,
Shrinks the problem.
Yeah. And secondly, perhaps counterintuitively, this self-directed focus often makes you more attractive not just to her, potentially, but to others as well.
It taps into that fundamental principle of self-reliance, doesn't it? When you're clearly engaged in your own passions and development, it signals that your sense of worth isn't dependent on external approval.
Totally.
Stoic Tribe even encourages you to reflect on times in your own life when you're deeply absorbed in your own projects. Remember that feeling. The need for constant external communication probably wasn't even on your radar.
Exactly. That's the kind of energy they're advocating for. When you're driven by your own internal compass, people sense that inherent self-confidence, and it's undeniably magnetic.
Okay, so we've discussed the initial do nothing and then redirecting our focus inward. What's the subsequent layer of this Stoic strategy?
So Stoic Tribe introduces the idea of strategic silence, which touches upon the concept of reverse psychology, but with that crucial Stoic underpinning.
All right, reverse psychology, but Stoic. How does that work?
It's about mirroring her silence, but originating from a place of genuine unaffectedness, not from resentment or a desire to manipulate.
Gotcha. So it's not about childishly giving her the silent treatment because she did it first.
No, not at all. It's about demonstrating through your actions, or lack thereof, that her silence truly has no hold over you. It's a subtle but powerful shift in the interaction's dynamic, where you're no longer reacting to her timing or lack thereof.
Precisely. The example they provide is key. Resist that immediate urge to send a follow-up text or ask why she hasn't replied.
The dreaded double text again.
Right. Instead, continue living your life visibly, perhaps sharing your activities with your social circle, showing you're engaged in your interests, but don't directly reach out to her. The idea is that she might start to wonder why you're not pursuing. If maybe she's lost your interest or if you've just moved on with your life, why might this lack of chasing trigger a different response, do you think?
Well, maybe it subtly shifts the perceived value. Like, readily available attention can sometimes diminish perceived interest, right?
That's a really insightful point. It plays on that basic human psychology of wanting what seems less readily available, or maybe just realizing they took your attention for granted. And when she eventually does reach out, and Stoic Tribe suggests this is a likely possibility, their advice is to respond calmly, without even mentioning her prior silence.
Oh, interesting. Don't even bring it up.
Nope. Just engage with her on the new topic, as if nothing out of the ordinary occurred. This understated shift can fundamentally alter the power balance.
It communicates that you weren't sitting by your phone, waiting for her response, that your life continued independently. It projects an image of self-assurance and control.
Exactly. Now, underpinning all of these strategies, the do-nothing, the self-focus, the strategic silence, is a foundational element, the very bedrock of this Stoic approach.
Absolutely, and that's the principle of maintaining your calm and remaining unbothered. Stoic Tribe strongly emphasizes how counterproductive it is to lose your composure when you're being ignored.
Right, like getting anxious, frustrated, or angry.
Yeah, that only validates that her actions are having the intended effect and inadvertently gives her more influence over your emotional state.
The Stoic alternative is to cultivate a state of inner equilibrium, to remain grounded and emotionally resilient, regardless of her behavior.
Mm.
It's vital to clarify, though, that this isn't about suppressing your genuine feelings or pretending you don't care. That's not healthy.
Right. It's not about being a robot.
No. It's about choosing how you respond to those feelings and not allowing her actions to dictate your entire emotional landscape.
It's about acknowledging your emotions, like, okay, I feel disappointed or I feel frustrated, but consciously deciding how you'll react to them. And Stoic Tribe highlights the enduring attractiveness of this sense of calm and self-mastery. People are naturally drawn to individuals who aren't easily thrown off balance.
Exactly. So how do you actually cultivate this inner calm when you're feeling slighted? Stoic Tribe suggests practical techniques like taking deliberate deep breaths, consciously creating some distance from the situation, maybe literally stepping away,
Perspective.
reaffirming your own self-worth, reminding yourself of your value, and engaging in activities that bring you a sense of peace and focus. It's about building that internal resilience muscle.
And this leads us to what Stoic Tribe terms the ultimate Stoic move, which is detaching from the outcome entirely.
Ooh, okay. Detachment. This might sound easier said than done, so let's break it down.
Yeah, it's a big one. Detachment, in this context, signifies releasing your dependence on whether she responds, whether she develops romantic feelings for you, or really any specific result from the interaction. Wow.
Stoic Tribe posits that true inner strength arises from your internal peace remaining intact, irrespective of external validation. Think about that hobby you love, right? You enjoy the process regardless of whether anyone else sees your creations or praises them.
The joys of the doing.
Exactly. Detachment here is similar, finding satisfaction in your own value and actions, irrespective of her response.
So it's about prioritizing your own well-being over the need for her attention or approval. It's about reclaiming control over your emotions and your life by not making your happiness contingent on her actions.
Bingo. And again, there's a compelling paradox at play here. Stoic Tribe suggests that this detachment can actually make you more appealing.
How so?
Well, when you're no longer driven by neediness or the fear of rejection, it projects a profound level of self-respect and security, qualities that others often find attractive. You're not trying so hard.
That makes sense. Less pressure, more confidence. They use the analogy of approaching various situations, whether it's a job interview or any scenario involving potential rejection, with a mindset of, I'll give it my best effort, but I'll be okay regardless of the outcome. That attitude of inner resilience is incredibly powerful.
It truly shifts your focus from trying to obtain something from her attention, her approval, to simply embodying the best version of yourself, regardless of how she reacts.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this conversation has largely centered on navigating being ignored in the context of dating. But let's broaden our perspective and consider some insights from neuroscience on the topic of loss, which our sources also touch upon.
Yes. We explored the perspectives of neuroscientist Andrew Huberman on breakups, and his insights offer a really powerful framework for understanding the intensity of the emotions that surface when we feel ignored or rejected. He explains that our brains actually process the loss of a significant connection in a remarkably similar way to grief and even the death of someone close.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
So, feeling ignored can literally trigger grief circuits.
Apparently so, on some level. What's particularly interesting is how the brain has to essentially register that the person is gone in time and space.
Okay.
Huberman points out that the constant presence of social media makes this neurological process more challenging because we're continually reminded of the person's ongoing existence.
The Instagram effect.
Exactly. It disrupts that necessary severing of what you could think of as mental habit loops that are constantly being reinforced by seeing the person online, even if they're ignoring you directly.
And he shares a really compelling finding from research comparing how men and women experience breakups. While women often report more intense initial emotional and even physical pain, they also tend to process the loss more fully over time. Men, on the other hand, often don't fully engage with and process those difficult emotions. They might seem less affected initially, but recover less completely.
That aligns with societal expectations, doesn't it? Around how different genders are often conditioned to handle emotions.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Huberman suggests this might be linked to men feeling less comfortable with fully acknowledging and expressing painful emotions, perhaps resorting to distraction or what he terms sublimation.
Sublimation, what's that in this context?
Well, here it means channeling those difficult feelings into other areas, like intensely focusing on work or hitting the gym obsessively or other activities.
Okay, see, using it as fuel almost.
Right. And he emphasizes that while distraction can serve as a temporary coping mechanism and even lead to productivity in other areas, it can also create the illusion of dealing with something without actually confronting the underlying emotional pain.
So you're busy, but not healed.
Precisely. This avoidance can postpone true emotional healing and potentially lead to unresolved issues popping up later on.
The key insight from Huberman's perspective, then, is the importance of leaning into those challenging emotions in a controlled and healthy manner.
Yeah, allowing yourself to feel the sadness, the disappointment, the grief, rather than constantly trying to suppress or avoid it, is crucial for eventual emotional release and healing. It's like a pressure valve, he suggests. You need to open it occasionally to release the built-up tension.
And this brings us back to you, the listener, because that feeling of being ignored or the pain of a breakup triggers these very deep emotional responses that Huberman describes. It really connects with something Matthew Hussey has discussed, this concept of unattended grief.
Mm-hmm. Hussey's conversation with grief expert David Kessler highlights that heartbreak, in any form, not just romantic, represents a change you didn't want, and that grief is always most acutely felt by the individual experiencing it, regardless of how it compares to others' pain. He touches on how we sometimes minimize our own feelings, comparing our heartbreak to, say, someone else's bereavement.
Right, the "it's not that bad" trap. And that's where Hussey introduces the powerful analogy of the buffalo facing a storm.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
When a storm approaches, buffalo instinctively head directly into it to get through it more quickly. But as humans, we often try to skirt around the edges of our emotional storms, ignoring, distracting, numbing.
Inadvertently prolonging our exposure to their impact. This avoidance can manifest in various ways, like you said, numbing ourselves, distracting ourselves, or defaulting to more outwardly directed emotions like anger.
Yeah, Hussey even suggests that anger can sometimes act as a bodyguard for pain,
Ooh, that's a good line.
isn't it? So when you feel that initial surge of anger in response to being ignored or rejected, it's worth considering what underlying sadness or disappointment might be lurking beneath the surface.
And this is where Hussey's emphasis on self-compassion becomes so important. He suggests that by acknowledging and allowing ourselves to feel our own pain, by basically showing up for ourselves emotionally, we can begin the process of healing and moving forward, rather than remaining stuck in the storm's orbit of those unresolved feelings.
It's about recognizing that feeling sorry for yourself in a healthy way is actually feeling for yourself, acknowledging the emotional weight of what you've experienced as a necessary step towards healing and personal growth.
So as we bring this deep dive into the sting of being ignored and the wisdom of Stoicism to a close, let's quickly recap some of those core principles. Remember, when you're faced with that silence, your initial focus should be on your own reaction.
Right, because that's the only aspect you truly have control over.
Exactly. Redirect your attention and energy towards your own life, your personal goals, and your overall well-being. This not only diminishes the impact of the situation, but can also enhance your overall attractiveness and sense of self.
Consider the strategic use of silence again, not as a manipulative tactic, but as a demonstration that her silence doesn't dictate your emotional state or your sense of self-worth. And above all, strive to maintain your composure and remain unbothered. Don't allow her actions to derail your inner peace.
And finally, embrace that more advanced Stoic concept of detaching from the specific outcome. True strength and freedom lie in your internal peace remaining intact, regardless of external validation or rejection.
But it's crucial to remember, like we just discussed, that this Stoic approach isn't about suppressing your emotions. As our discussion on neuroscience and the nature of grief highlighted, it's equally important to acknowledge and process your feelings, even the uncomfortable ones.
That self-awareness and willingness to confront your emotions is fundamental to building genuine emotional resilience. You can be stoic in your actions while still processing your feelings.
Well said. So here's a final thought for you to contemplate. How might intentionally applying these Stoic principles, coupled with a deeper understanding of your own emotional responses to feeling ignored, not only aid you in navigating the complexities of dating, but also fortify your sense of self-worth and inner peace in all facets of your life?
What might it look like for you to genuinely embrace your own inherent value, independent of any external validation?
So that's a question worth sitting with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.